Welcome back to Petty Astrology. I'm your host, Kaycee Felton-Lui. On the day this podcast comes out, which is August 21st, we're experiencing the end of this Leo season. I know, we hate to see her go, but we will be moving into Virgo season. And I wanted to talk a bit about this particular Virgo season and the moment that we're at, because I know a lot of us have just had a pretty intense week, if not longer, depending on our personal astrology and what we have going on in our lives. But even those of us who have been going through it, we're not alone. We're not alone. A lot of us have been dealing with things that have been coming up, some of them a little bit more expected, some of them not so expected. And regardless of our preparedness for whatever we might be facing at this moment, this is an opportunity for us to get all of our ducks in a row. We still have another week of Mercury retrograde in Leo now, and every Mercury retrograde is a chance to get caught up, to fix stuff that maybe we didn't have time for, or the right attention for, or whatever it is, things that we might have overlooked or missed. And that can be a very frustrating experience, especially, when we're experiencing delays and things not going the way that we wanted them to go. So I get the frustration, I really do. And I've been going through it right there with you. But at the same time, as much as the frustration is frustrating, it's also just a part of the process. Because coming up against things that aren't the way that we want them to be is often irritating, but usually there is something in those challenges that we can benefit from. So, maybe the tech issues with the video that you worked really hard on and then the sound got screwed up, maybe that wasn't meant to be. Maybe that video really didn't need to be seen the way that we thought we needed it to be seen. And maybe there's actually something better or more aligned that we could be creating instead. Or, maybe the meeting that got canceled, it's actually going to go better once it's rescheduled. And, the universe is complex. There's a lot of variables. So sometimes we don't know why or how something is benefiting us, but we can choose to take the perspective that no matter what happens, we can use whatever comes towards us to our advantage. And that's really the perspective that I take with astrology because, sometimes shit just sucks. Sometimes shit just sucks. And we don't have to pretend that sucky things don't suck. We don't have to bypass that feeling. But at the same time, I really discourage people from getting lost in frustration, because that can take up a lot of our energy and ultimately get us further away from whatever that ultimate goal we're moving towards is. So for me, it's like, why wouldn't you use everything to your advantage? So this Virgo season, it's not going to be like Mercury is still retrograde, but Virgo is a Mercury-ruled sign. And Virgo is very much about preparation, getting things ready. It's actually the sign of the harvest, because if we're talking about astrology as it relates to the seasons in the Northern Hemisphere, this is the time period where traditionally people would be harvesting the crops and essentially getting ready to move closer and closer towards winter, which is very difficult to grow crops in. So this is the time that we're preparing for the things that are to come later in the year. And so we find ourselves at this very interesting moment because, again, we're at the tail end of this Mercury retrograde, moving into Virgo season. And then, of course, very beginning of September, we have Pluto moving back into Capricorn. Dun, dun, dun. And I've had multiple clients in readings express to me that they're kind of dreading Pluto moving back into Capricorn. And I just want to say real quick that a lot of the people that are worried about it, they tend to have cardinal energy, and sometimes it's in the later degrees. I personally would not really be stressing about it. I would say if you have like a 29-degree cardinal sign in your chart, that yeah, maybe it's going to be a little stressful, because we're going to be kind of wrapping up some things that we have already started previously back when Pluto was in Capricorn last time. But as always, nothing is ever the same twice. So if you were really going through it back when Pluto was last at 29 degrees of Capricorn, it does not mean that it's going to be the same, not at all. But it may mean that you're wrapping some things up as we finish out Pluto in Capricorn. It's kind of the end of a cycle, the end of an era. And on a collective level, this is the end of an era for all of us, because once Pluto moves into Aquarius in November, that's it. There's no more Pluto in Capricorn for us in our lifetime. So collectively, we are finishing things up. And I'm not going to lie to you, Pluto in Capricorn this go around is going to be pretty intense because it's a handoff of energy. It's been a long road that we've had this Pluto transit, and not everything is going to be neatly tied up in a box at all. I think, in fact, a lot of different things are going to come to light that are going to set us up for Pluto in Aquarius. And I talk about it a lot because multiple decades of this transit, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. It's a new era for humanity. But I think that the collectivism, the cooperation that is possible with Pluto and Aquarius is going to be necessary because of things that we're going to see continue to come to the surface with Pluto in Capricorn. And again, I'm talking on a collective level. So these are things that we're witnessing politically, socially, economically. There's a lot at stake right now, and we're seeing fascism rise. We're seeing multiple pandemics taking people out left and right, and most people aren't really paying too much attention to that. And there's climate crisis, there's natural disasters, the weather is changing significantly. That affects crops, that affects agriculture, that affects everything. Everything. And the powers that be have shown very little interest in changing anything. There's a lot of lip service that happens. There's a lot of memes and virtue signaling and lip service, and not a lot of change that is meaningful to humanity at large. And so, with the deck stacked pretty high against the average person right now, I really foresee that each and every one of us who can see the situation for what it is, and there will be more of us as we go along, because as things degrade, as the situations continue to deteriorate, because, of course, without big action, this shit's gonna continue. I hate to say it, I really wish that was not the case. But it's going to continue until we do something. So with this Virgo season leading us right into Pluto and Capricorn, this is a further opportunity for us to act on all of the stuff that we've kind of been coming to terms with over the course of this Mercury retrograde. The stuff that we've kind of realized has fallen by the wayside, the stuff that we've been improving, editing, reorganizing. We're gonna have more momentum when Mercury goes direct and it's Virgo season. So it's a nice kind of handoff to where we're going to be able to really run with the stuff that we've learned from this Mercury retrograde. So for some of us, it's going to be about health, taking care of our bodies, our physical lives, our day-to-day. Because a lot of that stuff, I think, is easy to overlook because it does feel so simple, it does feel so mundane. But the fact of the matter is, if that stuff is out of whack, it makes a massive impact on every other part of our lives. So, the little things are actually big things. And that is something that Virgo energy tends to have a really great understanding of. And all of us have certain habits that maybe have not served us well. And my belief is that as we move to Pluto in Capricorn and then back to Pluto in Aquarius, we are really being prepared for what is to come. And it's not that the moment that Pluto goes into Aquarius for good, that, everything is going to shift. That's not really how the energy works. But we are entering an era of massive change. Massive change. And I know that humans don't tend to like change. And it's also very difficult for human beings to conceptualize change. Because when I say change, I have very specific ideas of what that means. But maybe you have a very different idea of what change could look like. I do not think that we're heading into this apocalyptic future. But I do think that shit is going to hit the fan. And again, I'm not saying right when Pluto moves into Aquarius, shit is going to hit the fan. I think we've been seeing shit hit the fan. We've been getting a lot of previews about some of the stuff that's really going to come to a head during this time period. Because the powers that be are operating off of this old system, this Capricornian, authoritarian, top-down way of organizing society that is fucking so many of us over. The people that benefit from that, they don't really have any interest in changing things because they benefit from it. Why would they? They'd be like, well, the rest of you can just deal with it. Stop being so lazy, get over the fact that there's natural disasters that we could be preventing by changing our way of life and not contributing to the climate being decimated in the way that it is. And in fact, with a lot of the legal decisions that have come out of the Supreme Court, a lot of those checks and balances have been stripped away. So all I'm seeing is escalation. I'm seeing a lot of opportunities for escalation. And human beings, I think, we have this tendency to just think that it's going to work out, especially in Western American culture. I think people think that everybody is customer service, and if they just talk to them in a certain way, everything will be fixed. And that's not how it works. That's not how it works. I think people think, it's okay if I get COVID over and over and I spread it to people that I care about because, science will come up with a solution. And the reality is let's say, a previous pandemic that we had, HIV, which was also a virus that damages the immune system. Not unlike COVID. It does impact your T cells. And it's very damaging. And as we know, we have come a long way in terms of care for people that are living with HIV. But at the same time, that took decades of research. And it's still not 100%. We're in a way better position with HIV than we used to be, but you still probably don't want to have HIV. And, thankfully we have things like PrEP that prevent people from getting and transmitting HIV in the same way that it used to be more commonplace. But that doesn't mean that HIV is good for you to get. And in the same way, getting COVID, spreading COVID, there's not these miraculous solutions that are going to come out right away and undo the damage that has been done to so many people's bodies. I think we have this sort of magical thinking about the way that the world works and the challenges that we have ahead. And with this Virgo season, I think we have an opportunity to remind ourselves that change happens when work is done, when people deal with the details that nobody else wants to think about. Ignoring your health, ignoring your well-being, ignoring situations, that's not really what gets us ahead. That's really not how we progress and deal with issues and move forward in a better place. And so on an individual level, I do think that this Virgo season will involve a lot of us tending to the personal stuff that needs to be tended to before we move into the next chapter of this year. It's a very unpretentious energy in a lot of ways. It's not really about how things look. so much as how things function. And so thinking about the way that your life is set up, is it functional? Is it serving you? Is it helping you get where you're going in the long term? Because we're paving the way into the future with the decisions that we're making right now. So this Virgo season, on an individual level, I want us all to be paying attention to the little things that come up. The little issues, the frustrations, the things that are just not going as smoothly as they maybe could be. Because Virgo energy is about refining, making things better, making things more functional. And we all have a lot of room for improvement. We all have a lot of things that could be working better than they are. And as we collectively enter this period of massive change, it's so important that on an individual level, we have our shit together as best we can. Because Virgo is also about being of service. And a lot of us are maybe better at being of service to other people. We're, taught to be helpers, especially if we're, socialized as girls. But we can forget that we can also be helpers to ourselves. And in fact, that's probably the best thing that we can do, because we really can't control what other people do, how they react to things, how they do their job. But what we can do is focus that attention inward and refine, sift, sort, and improve upon the things that just aren't as good as they maybe could be. Because having a routine, having support for your mental health, your physical health, all of those tools that we put in our toolbox, it's going to be important to be at the ready. And that doesn't mean that we have to be perfect. Our life has to be completely in order. But, as best we can, we want to have those tools in our toolbox and ready to go. Because when we're watching shit hit the fan out in the world, when we're hopefully organizing within our own communities and making those connections and building forward there, we're going to need all of that self-care to fall back on, to regenerate, to keep moving through the period that we're moving through. And many of us are really good at winging it. We are good at adapting. Humans are enormously resilient. But do we really want to be surviving when we could be actually maybe even thriving through this change, even though it may be challenging? We want to set ourselves up. We want to harvest all of the resources that we can, because again, Virgo is harvest season. And we want to put some stuff away, pack it up, have a little bit of a nest egg going into the future that we're heading into. We're filling up that metaphorical storeroom with stuff that we can come back to later, habits that are just going to become second nature to us as we move forward. We want to take care of ourselves in the best way possible and look at it as a preparation period. And no, it's not always the most sexy work. And again, Virgo is not about impressing other people. It's about things being functional, things being workable, things being supportive. And there's a lot of spirituality to be found in these little bit more mundane aspects of life, like exercising, changing our diet. Like sometimes that stuff doesn't feel very cool. It doesn't feel like maybe it belongs on an astrology podcast. But if we don't take care of those things, we are setting ourselves back. And it's going to make it a lot more difficult to surf through the changes that we're moving through as we go forward. And you don't have to have the answers right away, because part of this Virgo season can be figuring out what are the things that could use adjusting. What are the things in my mindset, my daily life, the way that I approach things that maybe aren't so helpful to me? If you're familiar with the Six of Swords card in tarot, that is a card that is depicting people going on a journey. And they've taken some things with them, but they've had to decide what they can put on that boat. And so this Virgo season, I want to imagine that we are going on a boat. we are heading to this boat that is going to take us to Pluto in Aquarius. And right now, our job is to sift and sort what gets to go on that boat with us. Not everything should make the cut. In fact, there's not room for everything to make the cut. But what are you going to want to take with you in a period of massive social change? What do you think you're going to need to ride that out, to work with it, to thrive in that energy, and maybe even be a part of building the better world that we're heading into? What are you taking with you? Who are you taking with you? What in your life now gets to stay? And what's just not cutting it anymore? What's not helping you? And is there anxiety from the things that you could be doing, but maybe aren't for whatever reason, to help yourself, to build community, to gather those resources emotionally, physically? This Virgo season gives us the opportunity to love ourselves, to be of service to ourselves in practical ways, ways that are going to serve us in the future. So this Virgo season, I'm wishing us all a very fruitful harvest because we've learned a lot this year. We've grown a lot. So it's time to gather what we've grown and put it to use. So the sun moves into Virgo on August 22nd at 7:55 a.m. Pacific time. And don't forget, we also have Venus already in Virgo. Venus will be squaring Mars on the 22nd as well. So it's going to be very Virgo-y. And I think this shift is going to be pretty noticeable to people because Virgo energy and Leo energy, quite different. And so if you're feeling like a little bit more frustrated, a little bit more nitpicky with yourself, with other people, we're going to have to take a step back on Thursday. We're going to have to kind of breathe through that energy. And like I said, this Virgo season, we are practicing with that toolbox. We are improving the toolbox, in fact, because we need a toolbox, because shit needs to be fixed. And Virgo is well aware of what needs fixing. And so, yeah, it's easy to notice what's going wrong. It's easy to notice what's going wrong. And instead of taking that energy and running with it in the worst way possible, I'm going to encourage us to look at the things that are frustrating, look at the things that we're seeing needing improvement, and practice not tearing ourselves and other people apart because of it. Because I don't know if you've ever tried to fix anything and had somebody standing next to you being like, well, fuck you. You're not very good at that. You're never going to fix this. You suck. You're the worst. Like, does that sound like it would be very helpful? No, but we do it to ourselves and other people sometimes, depending on our personality. But, you know, if you work in customer service, you know, there are plenty of people that are like that out there. And it's not helpful. So, you know, we're going to be going right into it on Thursday, and we're going to have to start practicing with these tools, with these new habits that we're building. So don't resist. Look at what is being revealed to you in this Virgo energy, because it's coming to the surface for a reason. It's coming to your attention for a reason. So perhaps something practical can be done and the situation can be improved upon. Friday the 23rd, I like the look of this day because the moon will be in Aries. It'll be rounding out the Aries transit. So we may be feeling more active, more energized on Friday during the day. But in the evening, we have the moon moving into Taurus. That happens at about 5 p.m. Pacific time. So this to me feels like we've had a long week, if not longer. So it looks to me like going home and getting your favorite snacks, cozying up, and kind of decompressing. This looks like a good night for some self-care. And not even just relaxing, but also kind of feeding your brain stuff that it likes, you know, some fun stuff, some laughs. But it looks like more rest and restoration and kind of just feeding ourselves literally and metaphorically would be a good activity for Friday evening. The weekend in general looks like it could be pretty active. I would say do things that you want to be doing. If you're kind of on the fence about plans that you might have, I would say maybe opt out, because this is a weekend to do things that you really want to do, things that feel good to you, things that feel restorative to you, things that feel fun to you. Sunday, I could see people feeling a little bit more stimulated. It's a little bit more of an active energy. So I would say that it's a good day to be open to inspiration, to be open to the decisions that come across your desk, so to speak. And if that's the case for you, I would be very intuitive about those decisions, really feel into them, and notice what's anxiety and what's not. Because anxiety can be really loud, and just because something is loud doesn't mean it's true or feels right for you. And I know a lot of us that work, Monday through Friday type jobs do a lot of the chores and things on Sunday, and there's certainly room for that in here too. But what I will say is that maybe give yourself a little breathing room if that's the case for you, and make sure that you're doing something a little bit creative, a little bit out of your norm if you can, because potentially it could be something that is very inspiring for you as you enter the week ahead. Monday, August 26th, I will say this is the best looking Monday that we've had in a minute. So it won't be as Monday-ish as previous Mondays, I think. And if anything, it might be a little bit more so for the East Coast people in the morning, and I think the day will get better as it goes along, just generally speaking. I'm basically like the weatherman for vibes. That's pretty much what this part of the podcast is, if you haven't figured it out. And so I can't tell you exactly how your day is going to go because I don't have your chart in front of me, but I can give you my thoughts about what we've got ahead. And hopefully it lets you know whether you need to bring an umbrella on a certain day, or maybe you can just take a chance and don't expect so much rain. Now, Tuesday, August 27th looks a little bit more spiky to me, and let me explain what I mean by that. The moon is going to be moving towards Mars, and so it may be that you have a very active mind that day. And that's totally cool. That can actually be very useful. I would write down ideas that come up that day. And it definitely looks like a day where we are going to be having a lot of ideas. Some of those ideas might be about where we're going in life, maybe how we've held ourselves back. We might even be really hard on ourselves. So again, we want to make sure that we're not turning the energy in on ourselves, weaponizing it. Because all throughout this next week in the background, there is going to be this sense of us thinking long term, thinking about how we're moving ourselves forward, what we are creating day by day, inch by inch. We might be looking at visions that we've had for ourselves that maybe haven't manifested in the way that we thought that they would. So it is a week that's going to be very easy for us to just pick ourselves apart and look at what we don't have, instead of what we have built, where we are now, and where we want to go next. Just because we're not at the top of the mountain doesn't mean that we're not on the mountain. It doesn't mean that we haven't made our way up that mountain quite a ways. And it may be that we find ourselves on a part of a mountain that we're actually not that into. We are allowed to go back to the drawing board and reshape the vision. And that can include our perspective on where we're at now. Because if the vision that we have is that we're going to get to where we're going in the end, and we're looking at where we are now, and we're like, you ain't shit, fuck you, why are you here? You're not as far along as you're supposed to be, so you might as well quit now. That ignores all the progress, all the effort, all of the learning that we've done up until this point. And maybe everything happens for a reason, maybe it doesn't. But I believe that our souls, our inner selves, whatever you want to call it, is fine with me. But I think that we're stronger than that. I think we're better than that. And I think that even if we do things that seem like major fuck-ups, that human beings are so resilient, we are so creative, that even those quote-unquote mistakes can lay beautiful foundations for where we want to go next. And in fact, I think that fucking things up sometimes teaches us more than succeeding ever could. And I told you, I'm a radical. I haven't hid that this whole time. I've been very clear that my perspective, it may not be popular, but it is powerful and it is transformative. And that's why I get on this fucking microphone even when I've been beat to shit all week and am exhausted and considered not putting anything out this week because I am fucking spent. But part of being of service to yourself, to anyone else, it's not about tearing people apart. It's about using the tools that you have in front of you to build what you need to move into the future. It's resourceful. So no matter what comes up for you this week, I'm going to need you to be constructive. I'm going to need you to be your own best helper. There are too many forces at work in the world that are happy to help you beat yourself down. Why would you use your energy to help them do it? Because there's too much at stake for you as an individual and for us as a collective. We need people who give a fuck. And we need them to encourage other people to give a fuck. Because we need a major cultural shift. And it starts from within. We cannot get further by beating ourselves into submission. So I'm going to need us all to practice self-care. And I'm not just talking about bubble baths and painting your nails. Those things are fine and great and bring me joy too. But the real thing that we all need to work on is how we show ourselves care. Because when we get really good at taking care of ourselves, it becomes a lot easier to build community, to give other people respect, and expect it in return, to set boundaries, to not take shit from anyone. And that includes ourselves too. Like, who the fuck do you think you're talking to, self? All right? And so if you catch yourself doing that, I want you to drag your ass back to this podcast and listen to me give you this little pep talk again. Because I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll be here. All right, everyone. I am sending you all much love. And that is it for this episode. I will see you next week with even more petty astrology. If you would like to become a sponsor of this podcast, I would really appreciate it. You help me pay my bills. You help me make this podcast possible. And I would like to make even more stuff for you, but I just don't have the budget. So that's where you guys come in. You are literally what makes this show possible and what is helping it to grow into something even bigger and better than it is already. So if you would like to join the Petty Astrology community, you get tons of perks. You can get my book, How to Find Community Using Your Astrology, the class that goes with it, and access to the Astro Den community, all for the price of $5 a month. And if that's not in your budget, you can join the Patreon community for free, and you get other perks there too. The link is in the show notes. This episode was brought to you by my sponsors over on Patreon.